in the Italian mafia. In exchange for that information, the FBI, in effect, gave Bulger carte blanche, which allowed him to get away with robbery, drug dealing, extortion, and according to a federal indictment, the murders of at least 19 people. What's more, one FBI agent has been charged with tipping off Bulger 6 years ago that he was about to be arrested, and that let him get away. The 71-year-old Bulger hasn't been seen or heard from since, and while his whereabouts are a mystery, Whitey Bulger's victims have been turning up all over Boston. In the past year, authorities acting on tips from members of his gang have dug up the bodies of 6 people Bulger himself allegedly tortured and killed. Eddie McKenzie, who worked for Whitey Bulger, took us to one gravesite where 3 bodies were discovered. The government says these are people who were killed by Whitey Bulger.
Yes.
They say that 19 people were killed. Does that number seem right to you, or?
I think you should multiply that by probably 3 or 4, and you'd be closer to right than you would with just 19.
What?
You're talking 70, 80, easily.
Do you think that the FBI bears any responsibility for any of these people who were killed?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Nobody knows more about the FBI and Whitey Bulger than Eddie McKenzie, who was given immunity in exchange for his testimony against rival drug dealers. McKenzie is the first member of Bulger's gang ever to speak publicly about Whitey Bulger and his $100 million criminal empire. How would you describe Whitey Bulger?
He had such a stare of blankness, no compassion in his eyes that just would horrify anybody. You could be 6'6", 360 pounds, the toughest guy. I've seen people almost go to the bathroom in their pants in his presence. He was so scary.
If you had to give a job description for what you did with Whitey, what would the job description be?
You know, leg breaker, drug dealer, scumbag.
Leg breaker?
Yeah, you know, one thing Whitey always told us was if you have to have a fight with somebody, you don't just knock somebody out and walk away. You pounce on them. You try to bite their nose off, bite their ear off, jump on their ankles, their wrist, anything. Stop breaking things.
Sounds like you'd do anything for him.
Absolutely. He was my Caesar. He was my boss. And, you know, in reality, what do you strive to be like your boss?
What did you admire most about him?
His ability not to get caught.
And he hasn't been, even though there's a $1 million reward out for information leading to his arrest, making Whitey Bulger the second most wanted man in America, right behind the terrorist Osama bin Laden. Until his disappearance, the job of handling Whitey Bulger as an informant was assigned to FBI agent John Connolly. But sometime in the late 70s, according to a federal indictment, Agent Connolly actually became a member of Whitey Bulger's gang, a partner in his crimes. The most devastating charge against Connolly is that he leaked classified FBI information to Whitey Bulger about a traitor in Bulger's gang. Soon after that, Bulger allegedly killed the traitor and a friend who was with him. What's more, Bulger enforcer Eddie McKenzie says Bulger told him that Agent Connolly served as a lookout while the 2 men were murdered.
They were killed in broad daylight. It was unbelievable. We're talking, and I'm saying, Jesus Christ, Jimmy, man, you got balls to do this. And, you know, he looked at me, he goes, I didn't have to have balls. I had Big Brother watching over my shoulder that day. I had no worries.
Big Brother was?
Big Brother, John Connolly in the FBI.
McKenzie says Connolly was sitting in an unmarked sedan a block from the murder scene with binoculars and a walkie-talkie, which Connolly used to communicate with Bulger. So you're saying that John Connolly, an FBI agent, was a lookout on a mob hit?
I'm just saying that James Whitey Bulger told me that Big Brother was looking out for me that day, and when I said Big Brother, he said John Connolly.
What did that incident tell you about Bulger's relationship with the FBI?
Oh, he owned him. I knew right away that they were sleeping together. I was like, this guy is unbelievable. I mean, I melted. I was like, I want to be with this guy forever. I'll never get caught. While Bulger was supposed to be giving the FBI inside information about the Italian mafia, he and his gang were also continuing to commit violent crimes, allegedly with the blessing of John Connolly and other FBI agents. Robert Fitzpatrick, now retired,
was the #2 man in the FBI's Boston office during the 1980s and an expert in psychological profiling of criminals. One of his first assignments was to interview Whitey Bulger to assess how good his information had been.
One of the things that came to my mind immediately was that, geez, this guy's a psychopath. I detected a great deal of lying. I mean, the guy turned out to be what I would call a pathological liar.
So you're saying that the information that he was giving to the FBI wasn't the truth, could not be trusted?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Fitzpatrick recommended to his boss in the Boston FBI office that Bulger should be terminated as an FBI informant. And did that happen?
No, sir, it didn't.
Fitzpatrick says a year later he made a second formal recommendation, this time to FBI headquarters in Washington, that Whitey Bulger be terminated as an informant and prosecuted. That recommendation was also ignored, even though Fitzpatrick says he had reliable information at the time from several law enforcement agencies that Bulger was involved in drug dealing, loan sharking, and murder. So you have information that, one, the guy's not trustworthy, two, that he's been involved in a murder, and you recommend that he be closed down, and your recommendation is ignored again.
Yes, sir. My recommendation is close this guy. But again, I guess the feeling is that he's giving information about the wise guys. That information they deem to be more important, and he's left open.
What's more, Fitzpatrick says he told FBI officials that he also had information that FBI agent John Connolly knew about the crimes Bulger was committing and protected him.
Connolly became the informant for Bulger. And in effect, Bulger is now inside the kingdom, if you will. He now has the keys to the FBI vault, to the FBI kingdom. Bulger can get any information he wants through Connolly, and, as we now know, did. That, to me, is shocking. And I might add, I'm angry over the fact that people were killed or murdered. I'm angry over the fact that it went on for so long.
Let me ask you a difficult question. As a former FBI agent, do you in any way hold other FBI agents, the Bureau itself, responsible for these murders?
Yes, I do. Yes.
John Connolly's relationship with Whitey Bulger lasted for more than 15 years. And according to the indictment, FBI agent Connolly was rewarded by Bulger for his work. Just a year after he became an informant, Bulger allegedly gave Connolly a diamond ring. Over the coming years, Connolly, on an FBI salary estimated at about $60,000 a year, managed to acquire assets that included a $400,000 house in an exclusive community outside Boston, a $300,000 summer home on Cape Cod, and according to Eddie McKenzie, Bulger told him he gave Connolly this townhouse in one of the most expensive areas of South Boston.
Yeah, if you combine all of those homes, you're probably looking at $1.5 million, $2 million worth of real estate.
So you think he gave him this house as a gift?
That's what I heard, right out of the man's mouth.
McKenzie says that Bulger even furnished Connolly's house and that other FBI agents were routinely given free merchandise from an appliance store which Bulger operated.
I carried a refrigerator here from the Broadway appliance store. I remember John Connolly pointing out beautiful state-of-the-art televisions, VCRs, video recorders, cameras.
And all for free?
You know, I was standing right next to the man, Whitey Bulger himself, when he says he doesn't pay for nothing here.
So what did he get in return from the FBI?
He killed over 30 people. I guess he got away with murder.
John Connolly, who is free on bail, declined our request for an interview, but he made a brief statement after he was indicted last October on 9 counts of racketeering and obstruction of justice, including a charge that, in effect, he helped Bulger become a fugitive by tipping him off just hours before he was going to be arrested.
I am innocent of the malicious charges that have been leveled against me in this case. And I would ask that all fair-minded people refrain from forming a judgment in this case until you have heard my facts and my evidence brought before a judge and a jury.
As for the charge that Agent Connolly acted as a lookout when Bulger allegedly killed 2 men, Connolly told the Boston Herald that is, quote, absurd. He says he was working at the time of the murders. But corruption within the Boston FBI office goes beyond the case against John Connolly. His former supervisor, Special Agent John Morris, has admitted accepting $7,000 in payoffs from Bulger's organization. And another agent, Paul Rico, is under investigation to determine his role in the framing of 4 innocent men, 2 of whom spent 30 years in prison for murders that were actually committed by a mob informant who worked for Agent Rico.
I think our worst nightmare would be to have us judged on the basis of the acts of a couple of rogue employees.
Charles Prouty is the special agent in charge of the FBI's Boston office. Let me briefly touch on the indictment of former FBI agent John Connolly. He's charged with committing crimes as far back as, I think, 1976, and as recently as just a few years ago to protect Whitey Bulger and his criminal organization. You run the FBI office. How do you respond to that? I mean, that's one of your guys.
The crimes that he's been alleged to commit are that whole situation is appalling to me and to every other FBI employee.
Agent Connolly denies receiving any gifts from Bulger and says his actions met FBI guidelines for handling high-level mob informants and were approved by his superiors. Charles Prouty says those guidelines have now changed, requiring more oversight and accountability of FBI agents. As for the whereabouts of Whitey Bulger, Prouty admits the trail is cold. How does a 71-year-old man elude capture for 6 years? How does he do it?
He's a smart individual. He planned for years for the contingency that he might have to become a fugitive. We believe that he has stashed money throughout the United States. He already had false identification made, and he is very, very clever.
Eddie McKenzie says the FBI could find Whitey Bulger if it really wanted to.
I believe that he's on the 10 most wanted list because they're not looking for him, but they want us to think that they are.
You think the FBI doesn't want to find him?
No.
But why wouldn't they want to find him?
Because of his marriage to the FBI over the past 2 decades, all the information that he has. You know, if they find this guy, he might open a whole can of worms. They're probably happy that he's not surfacing.
Well, all I can say about that is that's absolutely untrue. We are doing everything we possibly can to arrest him.
Meanwhile, Whitey Bulger, a known master of disguise, has not been seen in 6 years. McKenzie says his former boss could be just about anywhere.
He could be in a rocking chair right now with an old lady's outfit on, laughing at America right now. Everybody's looking for him. He's just a master. And that's the thing you respect. That was the amazing part. His ability not to get caught.
Kevin Weeks is a soft-spoken 49-year-old native of South Boston. But don't be fooled by the low-key, matter-of-fact way he answers questions about his life of crime. You seem to have committed every crime in the book. Let me know if I've got all of this right. You beat people up?
Yes.
Put them in the hospital?
Yes.
Shot, stabbed people?
Yes.
Helped kidnap